Eddie here. Welcome to Lost Saves. It's been a little while, and I kind of wanted to provide a quick little follow up on a discussion we had on the Dualcom podcast I host with BBK Dragoon. At the time of recording, we just posted our episode 9, where we talk about the revolution that needs to happen for AA games to kind of take over the games industry as AAA just continues to fall apart. And I also talked about my intentionally over optimistic view that Microsoft and Xbox could be on kind of the forefront of taking over the game with the consoles if they don't go for a pro model this generation and try to do a new console before Sony does. And of course, the day the episode went live, we got news that Microsoft is raising their console prices a kind of ridiculous amount, to the extent that the 2 terabyte Xbox Series X model now costs more than the PS5 Pro. I'm combining my thoughts that I had in that show, which I do recommend listening for context. I will have the links to it in the description, with another video that just came out today from Jeff Grubb about the Xbox price increases and how neither Nintendo nor Microsoft seem to be interested in growing the console market anymore. It feels like everyone got a feel for what the extent of console player base could be, I guess, during the pandemic, with the kind of overinflated peak that it got to. And they're just not interested in trying to make it accessible anymore. And they're just trying to milk us for all of our money. I'm kind of combining my thoughts on that, and I wanted to expand because I definitely think my optimism about Xbox at the time, and keep in mind, I'm someone who's made many videos and statements at this point about how I've kind of been burned as an Xbox consumer and how I won't really be supporting their hardware and stuff moving forward. I still felt a little bit of optimism with regards to their positioning in the market, but I feel like with today's news and the broader context, that maybe comes off in not a great position anymore. And I'm just having more thoughts as I sit on this, let it stew. Pretty much every podcast we record, things just kind of sit with me more. I listen back to what we talk about, and I have more and more thoughts, which is part of why we kind of rehash some topics over and over on that show, because things keep coming to mind for both of us. The more we talk about these things, to listen to your all's comments and so on. And with this one, for me, the way I see it, AAA gaming is kind of turning into a different entity than it was originally. AAA gaming kind of evolved as games grew as a medium. Games didn't necessarily, I mean, there were big studios and obviously the console manufacturers, but AAA gaming didn't necessarily exist early on. Even developers hired by the console manufacturers themselves were just throwing things together as they could, throwing stuff to the wall and seeing what sticks. They were developing their ideas that they had. I mean, you think about the launch title Halo for Xbox, like they were making a Mac title originally. None of it was this massive budget AAA enclosed space. And it kind of evolved as gaming got more popular, which meant it was a from within kind of growth. But now, as we talk about on the podcast over and over, and you've probably heard a million people talk about, the AAA industry is primarily headed up by people who have no clue about games. They don't care about the industry. They're not interested in making the best game possible. They are interested in making the most money possible. And that is fine for what they are, but that's not a games industry anymore. It is a speculative bubble industry of sorts. It is executives that ran companies like King and Zynga making Farmville for Facebook that are like, okay, how can we extract the most money here? Whereas before, up to a certain point at least, there was always people interested in making the cool game stuff. Console hardware would go toe-to-toe on pricing to get the best possible pricing for the buyer because that was in everyone's best interest. I think what we said in that episode about AA leading a revolution, and that is still higher budget, not indie devs, but, smaller teams that aren't owned by any of the megacorps. I think them leading a revolution is going to be the absolute requirement for games to survive as a medium that any of us want involvement in. And I think there's going to be consequences to that we might not like. And that's unfortunate. I think ultimately it's a good thing, obviously. We get smaller devs with stronger creative vision, with a drive to make games people want to play, people want to enjoy. You think about the quotes from Larian where Sven talks about, not implementing anything that is there just to make money or just to drive engagement from a player. You think about the small French studio making Expedition 33, releasing this beautiful, awesome game, thanks to the accessible tools of Unreal Engine, which if you don't like UE5, as a lot of people have, I can hear Alex Battaglia in the background yelling about micro stuttering as I think about it. Like there are definitely some negative side effects in that in terms of innovation. You know, devs not being able to afford to build their own engines anymore and that kind of thing. But obviously we are going to get a lot of good from that. But I think as AAA crumbles more and more, and in an ideal world, that would just be like EA and Ubisoft. Like EA just laid off 400 people. They're continuing to fail to capitalize on trends. Ubisoft doing similar mistakes. Like in an ideal world, it would just kind of be them, and then things would disperse back into the AA kind of space. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think we're going to see console hardware become less relevant. And as someone who can game on PC, like as we get this news about the price increases, the price of games increasing, the price of controllers increasing, PC gaming becomes way better looking of an investment. Whether you play on the Steam Deck, whether you play on a desktop PC, you got an OLED TV, or you're just playing on a basic screen, you can scale it to whatever budget you want. And I think the appeal of playing older games becomes a lot more appealing. You have 30 years of video games you can run on a computer, or you can emulate through emulators. PCSX2 is incredible for PS1 emulation or PS2 emulation. If you want PS1 emulation, DuckStation. Dolphin for GameCube and Wii is mind-blowing what features they've implemented in the development at play. And you can acquire your own games however you want, or you can buy them and rip them yourself. You can integrate with original peripherals. I have a video coming on using a Game Boy as a controller for that, which is insane. It becomes more appealing. But the one thing I have harped on for a couple years now that is super important to me for gaming, we lose along the way. And that is the tangibility of the game. I'm going to do something really stupid here, and I'm going to, like, if I just turn my camera here, which is not set up for this, my neon light's off, I can go over here to a shelf, I can see what stands out to me, and pick a game. I can go grab, maybe I want to play Cry Machina on the PS5. Or freaking Tenchu on the PS2. There is a tangibility to kind of window shopping for your game that you absolutely lose when everything is digital, everything is subscription based, and you have no ownership and control over everything. The reason everyone could start gaming in the early to late 2000s was because hardware and games were cheap. I consider now, even though I didn't realize it at the time, like 2006 to 2011 was like the golden age of everyone could start gaming. You had the Xbox 360 and PS3 just dominating the market. Halo 3 was like the biggest game ever. Everyone you knew who'd never played a game before was playing Madden or Call of Duty. And those who really just wanted to keep gaming and couldn't afford a whole lot, you could go pick up a $90 PlayStation 2 and get games for $5 a pop without any question. Controllers were everywhere. They might have been filthy. You might have had to bleach them, but they were there and they were working. You could get games for cheap. You could find them at yard sales. There weren't scalpers out the wazoo trying to sell them on eBay or get them graded. It wasn't this weird speculative stock bull crap. You could get games. If you were lucky, you found someone's stash of Super Nintendo or Nintendo 64 or PS1 games. GameStop was doing great and not doing predatory stuff. You had mom and pop shops out there, even though they were starting to close at this point. And it was accessible and it was tangible because you had a used game market where people could pass games along to each other. You had discounts everywhere and you had older hardware that was cheap and accessible. And as new consoles came out, the older ones got cheaper and cheaper. And as an individual console was out over its lifespan, it would get cheaper and cheaper. Now we are seeing everything go as digital as possible. We're seeing the consoles get more expensive. We're seeing so much combativeness from publishers and the console manufacturers against physical games, against sharing used games, against any of those ideas. If the console stops being the kind of... My camera really turned. What happened? Did it just turn the whole time I was talking? If the console stops being the default way that people play games, we lose kind of all of that. And that's weird to say as someone who's I've been PC gaming since I was 9 months old. I played my first video game on DOS. I've always been a PC gamer, but I've also always been a collector. I've wanted physical copies. I've wanted to share in that joy of passing a game on to a friend to borrow, of going up to a shelf or a binder full of games and just being like, what do I want to play today? What stands out? And it's so much easier if you have a limited collection because that's all you can afford, or you buy and sell so that you only have what games you're playing at the moment, or you have a shelf that's your favorites that you're picking between at the time. Whereas if you have an infinite Steam list, an infinite GOG list, a console account with every game sub-game listed together, it is so much more difficult to even pick a game. If you are someone who doesn't just know life a singular game, why is my camera still turning? I'm sorry. I unlocked it to do my stupid walk over to the shelf stunt. There we go. It should stop moving now. When you have access to everything, each individual thing feels like it's worth less. And when you have an infinite list to pick between, nothing sounds as appealing. I struggle with this with my wife at the moment. Like my wife just said to me last night that they miss cable television to a degree because we could just flip it on and channel surf when we truly don't want to watch anything meaningful. We could just flip it on and channel surf and see what's on. Whereas my massive jellyfin library of movies and TV shows, it somehow becomes harder to pick what to watch sometimes. And the same thing with my Steam library. I love Steam. I've been using it for like about 15 years now. I got it with Counter-Strike Source. I have like 1,300 Steam games, and I try my best to categorize and to keep like ongoing backlog lists and everything to keep my games together. But sometimes I'm just like, I want to see what feels good. And if I'm going digital only, it is really hard to pick. On top of the fact that it makes gaming so less accessible. Normal families who aren't full of techie nerds and like hardcore gamers have a really hard time keeping up with the crazy account juggling you have to do with game services, with license management and all of that. Even for myself, I made a video on this, but trying to share my Xbox account with my kiddo to play Minecraft since he was only going to use a controller and play that way. It became this whole nightmare that I just built him a PC to play on there instead because the licensing and like account management was such a nightmare, and I ended up getting scammed out of extra copies of the game. Normal households can't really deal with that. Whereas hand them a Nintendo and a cartridge or a PlayStation and a CD, and they did not have many issues dealing with it. Obviously, there are downsides to physical media. I'm not immune to that. You can damage them, you can break them, you can lose them. Disc rot's a thing. But having the option and continuing to maintain that option, that accessibility, that tradition of sharing and passing down, the tangibility of even just shopping. Like, you remember going to Blockbuster and just like picking out a game to rent for the weekend with your parents? I did that with my dad all the time. We had the local game shop we'd usually go to instead of Blockbuster, but we did do some rentals with Blockbuster for a while. You could kind of treat Game Pass like that now, or the Sony games of the month. Like, if that's all the games you have access to for the month, that's probably pretty cool. It's over now, but they just had freaking RoboCop on PS5, which I was waiting to buy, so saved me some money. Got that through the PS Plus subscription. And now they have Balatro and Warhammer Bolt Gun and Ark, which is not a good lineup for May, but hey, Game Pass, you got Oblivion Remaster and Expedition 33 and Indiana Jones Day 1. Like, if that's how you want to limit it, that's cool. But if you want to maintain those memories and keep games for a long time, we talk about a lot on this channel and on BBK's channel and in the podcast. We talk a lot about the games that have stuck with us our entire lives, the games we go back and play. When I go grab any number of weird PS1 games that I grew up playing to pop in my PS1 and relive, or I order new ones I hadn't heard of and only heard rumors of from a friend. When games are digital only, when you don't have the flexibility to buy them after they've released or been taken offline, removed from stores, how often is that happening lately? We lose the ability to preserve those experiences. And I'm not even talking about in a games preservation standpoint, but purely within your own life and memory. Media is something that we build significant like sentiment towards. You have your favorite song. Some couples have the song that they danced to at their wedding, or that was their kind of thing as they've been together, or their favorite movie they went to a first date on, or your first video game. My wife and I have a lot of those memories around video games. And when we cannot return to that or continue to experience that or share that or pass that on after that moment, that can really affect our perception of time, our ability to appreciate our past, to re-engage with it healthily. It turns into FOMO and into a kind of toxic form of nostalgia that you can never really recover from. I think AA is going to revolutionize gaming. We talked about this on the podcast a ton. I'm trying not to reiterate a bunch, but I know not everyone has the context of the podcast, but like games like Expedition 33, where games like Astrobot, games built by a smaller team, Astrobot is not in this, but that are more independently funded, are the future. They are games, Baldur's Gate, games that are built by a small team with no ulterior motives, with no public investments designed to get massive returns on that investment. So they have to introduce other factors that don't just benefit the game. That is where gaming was. That is when gaming was at its peak. All of our favorite franchises from the olden years, like I think about Mass Effect and Dragon Age coming from BioWare, Halo, like those from Bungie, even early Battlefield days, like so many of those games were effectively AA games when they were made. And either the publishing house that they are under, the umbrella, or through acquisitions, got to that point that they are now AAA. But the games that we loved were built by that smaller, dedicated team that just cared about the game, that didn't care about optimization of your engagement and shoving every microtransaction option in there and everything like that. And those things detract from the experience in ways that have permanent detrimental effects on the game, either because the game itself just gets shut down eventually. Like I'd still like to play a single player version of Anthem. I'm so glad we got Suicide Squad put into an offline mode. That needs to be the standard moving forward. Or because it ruins its reputation so much that people don't play it, or because one little thing became a hot take on social media and the studio got shut down because it didn't perform super amazing when it was a perfectly fine 5, 6, 7 out of 10 game. AA is going to save gaming. It is where the games that you are going to enjoy are. I know a lot of people, as we've been talking about the plight of AAA, have been like, indie games are where it's at, dude. I understand that, and there are a lot of amazing indie games. They are not always what you want from your core gaming experience. I think about Balatro. I have put so many hours into Balatro on my phone, but it's not a game I want to play when I sit down and want to play an Expedition 33 or a Battlefield or Paper Mario. Like it's not the same kind of experience, and that applies to a lot of games. AA is where the new like top tier full games will be, and that's great. I look forward to it, but I'm really, really worried about the potential end here of the tangible, physical, shared gaming experience, as we are possibly ushering into a complete wave this next generation of digital only potentially and subscription-based gaming. AA will not be able to stop that. We've seen more issues than not of AA games struggling to get physical prints because they don't have the right backing. I'm really worried about what we will lose along the way as the AAA system crumbles. I don't mind that it's crumbling. I'm minding that it's taking some of the fundamentals and the roots with it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that in the comments. I know my rule is I only make a negative downer video every once in a while, so this is my one for a while, especially since I haven't been making videos. I will hopefully get back to them soon. I've been on a super crazy grind sesh for like the first 6 months of this year. But come June, I will be on more of a vacation and we'll be making more music and hopefully doing a lot more gaming, including Expedition 33. Already picked it up on the Steam sale. I look forward to playing it and getting these videos back out here. Appreciate you all hanging out with me. Appreciate all the support last year on the videos, and hopefully we'll get more going this year. Appreciate you listening to me talk. If you have made it thus far, go listen to the DualCom podcast for more of our thoughts on this and Jeff Grubb's amazing video. He's a great guy. Good bud. Link in the description below as always. And remember to be kind. Rewind.